Hi folks, Bob here again. Listen, I was sitting at my dining room table today and I was watching a raven take some bread out of my backyard. We threw some bread out there for the birds, and this raven picked it up. And immediately my mind went to Elijah. Elijah, when God sent him, the first part of his ministry in 1 Kings, you find out that God sends him to a brook, to go wait by a brook for further instructions. And while he's waiting at the brook, God says, a raven is going to bring you bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the afternoon to provide for you. Okay? Now, of course, Elijah did this, we know, and he ate the bread and the meat, and he drank the water from the brook, and then the brook dries up. And then God says, okay, now that the provision is gone for you here, I am going to send you to a widow's house. And the widow's going to provide for you. But of course, Elijah gets there. The widow's got no food for him. As a matter of fact, she just has enough for herself and her son, and then they're both going to go die. So Elijah, this is where you start to see the supernatural start to work in Elijah. This is when Elijah says, ma'am, don't worry about it. Have no fear. Just feed me, and the provision will not run dry for you. Now that's some faith, let me tell you that. But God didn't, and this is just the beginning of Elijah's ministry. We know that Elijah held back the rain, and we also know that Elijah made it rain again. And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today, is being a rainmaker for God. Okay? Being used by God, an instrument to be used by God to do the supernatural, so that you can see the hand of God. See, that's what signs and wonders are all about. They're for people to wonder, what the heck is going on? Oh my gosh, what is that over there? And that's when we can say, that's our God. Do you know him? Let me introduce you to him. Let me show you how you get to him. That's the reason that God has signs and wonders. And everywhere I go, when I ask people, how many want to be used by God? Everybody raises their hands. Yes, use me, God, use me, God. I want to be an instrument just like Elijah, just like Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yes, God, I want that. Everybody does, but are you willing to do what Elijah did? See, before Elijah is being used supernaturally like this, God sent him to the brook. God put him in a position to have to trust in God. God tested him, and God's going to test you. He's going to put you in a situation, and he's going to ask you to do something, and he's going to see how obedient you are. See, Elijah sent to a brook. He said, you're going to be fed by a raven. It's going to bring bread and meat to you. Now, it's one thing to read it, but it's something else to do it. Let me ask you something. What if God came to you tonight and spoke to you inside of your mind and said, I want you to go down. I want you to leave your place right now, where you're at, the provision's there. I want you to go down the street, around the corner, into the woods, and wait by the brook for me to give you further instructions. Don't bring any food with you. Don't worry about it. I'm going to send a bird that's going to feed you. Now, I want you to think about that. Sitting by a brook, drinking brook water. Okay? Now, I know back then you're saying, well, they didn't have the water systems that we have now. Okay, so I'll give you that one. There's no Dasani back there. They're used to drinking brook water. Now, okay, the bird's going to bring you food. Meat. Think about a raven bringing you a chunk of meat. Where did he get this meat from? Do you think he went over to Harris Teeter's and picked some up? Maybe he stole it off of somebody's grill in the backyard? Hardly. All right? That's part of the test. Did he get it from a carcass of an animal that may have died in the wilderness? Are you even going to trust that God's going to give you the provision? One, will you even go to begin with? Two, if you did go, how long would you stay there? If this raven came and plopped a chunk of meat down there, would you even eat it? Or would you say, there's no way I'm eating that thing? See, that's where the first test is. God's going to put you in a situation where you may not like it, but are you going to trust him? He's going to test to see if you're obedient. And he does it all the time. He does it with our finances. He does it with our time. See, we all want to be used by God, but we don't even want to take a test. We want to take the easy way out. Elijah passed the test. He stayed there. The brook dried up. Okay, God, now what? There's no brook. There's no water. A woman's going to provide for you. Good. He goes to their house. Well, she doesn't have anything. Well, Elijah now knows that God is not a liar. He can't lie. So he sent me here, so he must have the provision here as well. It's got to come. It has to, because God said so. That's where your faith needs to be if you want to be a rainmaker. You've got to understand that God is in control. He does not lie. His word is his word. So even in a time like this with the economy so rough, you've got a lot of people, maybe you, have lost your job. Times are tough. Well, one, if you believe that God gave you the job and you lost it, what are you worried about? God gave it. Therefore, he must have other provision out there for me. So I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to be applying. It's got to be where God wants me to be, someplace else, because my job dried up, just like the brook dried up. He's going to have me go somewhere else. I'm going to listen for his voice. And when he says to go, I'm going to go. I don't know how he's going to provide, but even I know that if I get hungry enough, God's going to provide. I may have to walk outside my front door. If I do, there's going to be manna on the ground, or quail will be out there. Somehow, God's going to provide. He may use a neighbor to drop a sack of groceries off, but God's going to provide. Do you trust that he's going to provide for you? Do you trust him? See, I want you to get to the point where you trust God so much that you bank on his word, because he's Jehovah Jireh. He's our provider. And when you start to build your faith, and you start walking with your head up high, I don't know how God's going to pay my light bill, but it is. I don't know how my mortgage is going to get paid, but it's going to get paid. I don't know how I'm going to make it without a job, but I'm going to get a job. One way or another, it's going to happen. Why? Because God is my provider. When you start saying, I don't know if this is going to work, I don't know what's going to happen, now you're looking more towards what the devil's doing with that negative stinking thinking than you are at the promises of God. Get your head in the cloud. You don't have to know how. All you got to know is it's coming. It's coming. It's out there. And then keep walking. Do you remember when the Israelites were crossing the Jordan? The river did not get held back until they were right up against it. As a matter of fact, it said that the priests had to put their foot in the water. And as soon as the priests touched the water, that's when it opened up. When you need it, it will be there for you. Bank on it. Have that kind of faith. Hold your head up high. Have a positive idea. I don't know how my God's going to do it, but I know he's going to do it. That's what we're looking for. When you've got that kind of faith, now you can start to make it rain. So I want you to go out there. Build your faith up. Be positive. Look for God's provision. And be a rainmaker. People need to see it. God bless you. Have an awesome afternoon.